Hi everyone. Today I'm visiting Cinq, a 3 Michelin-starred restaurant in Paris. Before coming here, I expected dinner to cost around 500 euros per person, excluding wine. So that was roughly the budget I had prepared. I had never even visited a 1 Michelin-starred restaurant in Korea before. However, while traveling in France, I was lucky enough to get a reservation at a 3 Michelin-starred restaurant, so I decided to take this opportunity. Before we begin, I would like to make one thing clear. This was my first ever experience at a Michelin-starred restaurant. I had never visited this level of high-end restaurant before. So please keep in mind that this is simply a very personal and highly subjective review from an ordinary customer. Now let's get back to the video. One of the main reasons I came here was because I thought, when will I ever get another chance to visit France and dine at a 3 Michelin-starred restaurant that is also difficult to reserve? Our reservation was at 7:30 p.m. When we arrived, the restaurant was still fairly quiet. Once we were seated, the waiter asked whether we wanted still or sparkling water. I prefer sparkling water, so that's what I chose. This part was not captured on camera, but a staff member later brought over a bottle of champagne and showed it to us. Then he asked whether we would like some. We assumed it was a complimentary welcome drink, so I said yes. However, we later realized that it was not free, we had been charged for it. The first welcome snack was a waffle-shaped bite made with a potato base and topped with cheese. To be honest, it basically tasted like potato and cheese eaten together. I had expected something very different, so I was slightly taken aback by how familiar and ordinary the flavor was. I kept eating because I thought there must be something more special about it, but I personally could not find anything particularly different. Maybe I had expected too much because this was a 3 Michelin-starred restaurant in France. France is a country famous for its cuisine. I thought the restaurant would offer flavors that I had never experienced before, so compared with those expectations, I felt quite disappointed at first. Next, we were served an appetizer that seemed to be designed to awaken the palate. There was a thin tart with what tasted like a sweet and tangy grapefruit jam. On top of it was a very thin crispy dome. There were also several decorative elements placed on top. I was excited because this was finally something unusual. It was something that I had never seen or tasted anywhere else. The grapefruit jelly was sweet and tart. The thin crispy dome shattered in my mouth. As it broke apart, it released a subtle sweetness and a delicate aroma. The next bite looked like something made from very thin noodles. The noodles had been rolled into a circular shape and baked. There was also something placed on top, but it has now been almost a month since the visit, so I honestly cannot remember exactly what it was. I'm sorry about that. However, I do remember the next dish. There was something inside, a thin crispy shell. Caviar was placed on top. I had never tried caviar before, so I had always been curious about its flavor. When I tasted the caviar on its own, it was mildly salty, but not overpowering. It was soft and reminded me slightly of very small salmon roe. When I ate all the elements together, the flavors worked beautifully. The overall combination was very well balanced. Here is the menu. I do not speak any French, so the staff kindly brought me an English menu. My friend is married and speaks French at a near native level. He discussed the wine selection with the waiter after we ordered. They presented the butter in a very elegant and dramatic way. They also kept refilling our bread whenever we ran out. I think I had at least 8 additional servings of bread. I had only seen sommeliers open, smell and taste wine on YouTube before. Seeing the sommelier open the bottle and check the wine directly in front of us made the experience feel more professional. It also made the experience feel more reassuring. This is the wine we ordered. For our starters, my friend and I ordered different dishes because we wanted to share them. We asked the waiter whether they could divide each dish in half. We wanted them to serve half of each dish to each of us. They said it was possible, so we believed that the dishes would simply be split between us. However, there seems to have been some miscommunication. Instead of dividing the 2 dishes in half, an additional order was placed for each starter. We only realized this later, when the extra charge appeared on the bill. It added roughly 130 euros. That was almost 200,000 Korean won per person. Still, this was an unforgettable experience, so I do not regret it. We were not given a very detailed explanation of every dish. They did not explain all the ingredients or the meaning behind the presentation. Therefore, some of my descriptions are based purely on what I remember. They are also based on what I assume the ingredients were. I believe I ordered number 3, which was the gratinated onions. My friend ordered number 4, which was the lightly poached oysters. I cannot remember every detail clearly, but one dish had a pudding-like texture with a slightly tangy flavor. I am not sure what the green layer on the outside was, but it seemed to add some acidity. The raspberry was also sweet and tart. I think it helped stimulate my appetite. In my opinion, one of the signs of a skilled chef is how well they use acidity. In that respect, this dish really showed why the restaurant had earned 3 Michelin stars. First, I tried the oyster dish. The clear jelly-like sauce was packed with a deep and concentrated umami flavor. The oyster itself had no unpleasant fishiness at all. It was incredibly tender, creamy, and slightly nutty. The brown sauce reminded me a little of barbecue sauce. The oysters I had tried in Korea had a strong briny smell and a slightly fishy taste. I could eat them, but I had never really been a big fan of oysters since I was young. This time, I wanted to challenge myself and try something new. I had also heard that your palate can change as you get older, so I decided to give oysters another try. The edible flour itself did not have much flavor. However, it made the dish visually appealing, and it was a feast for the eyes. The small pearls on top of the oyster added an interesting texture. They also created an unexpected burst of flavor. Next, I tried the onion dish. The sauce had a very rich and concentrated flavor. It was almost like a deeply reduced barbecue sauce. However, the sauce was so overpowering that I could barely taste the other ingredients. In many well-known restaurants, onion dishes are often cooked until the onions turn brown and become caramelized. This usually brings out and intensifies their natural sweetness. This onion had a subtle sweetness, but it did not have the rich sweetness I normally associate with caramelized onions. Texture did not seem boiled or steamed. I think it may have been roasted in the oven just enough to preserve its texture while bringing out a gentle sweetness. There was also something inside the onion, but I was so hungry that I practically devoured it, and I cannot remember what the filling was. For the main course, we both ordered the spaghetti gratin. When I heard the word gratin, I imagined something flat that would be baked in a dish. However, this completely changed my idea of what a gratin could look like. The pasta strands were arranged into a neat square shape. The inside appeared to be filled with several different ingredients. It was visually fascinating and completely new to me. The dish contained ham morels and black truffle. There were many other dishes that I also wanted to try, but we had heard that this was one of the restaurant's signature dishes, so we both chose. It seemed to contain real truffle rather than simply truffle oil. The truffle aroma was unbelievably intense. This was probably my favorite dish of the evening. It was rich, fragrant, and absolutely delicious. I used to think of myself as a bit of a foodie. I had tried a wide variety of dishes and often enjoyed analyzing their flavors. But after this meal, I realized that I might simply be someone who really loves eating. Still, I believe experiences like this can broaden my perspective. They can also deepen my understanding of food. I do not think the true value lies in immediately identifying every ingredient. For me, the value comes from looking back on the experience later. I can recall the flavors, the atmosphere, and the emotions I felt at that moment. Being able to relive those memories makes the experience even more meaningful. It also makes the meal feel more valuable to me. As I continue having experiences like this, I keep thinking about the kind of person I want to become. I do not want restaurants like this to be places I can visit only after saving up for a special occasion. I want to become successful enough to bring my loving family to places like this on an ordinary weekend. I want us to enjoy meals like this without having to worry too much about the cost. So I need to stop merely thinking about becoming successful. I need to turn that determination into action. Before dessert, we were served several small palate cleansers. One seemed to be a chocolate tart, topped with fruit. Another tasted like a candied kumquat. The last one was a small piece of very rich and intense chocolate. Next, we were served something that looked like ice cream. The staff told us that it was made with egg white and yeast. I could taste the egg white, but I felt that there was another flavor I could not identify, so I was glad that I asked the staff about it. I had heard that Cinq was also famous for its desserts. Personally, when it comes to dessert, I believe you cannot go wrong with chocolate, so I chose the chocolate and hazelnut crisps. I had never tasted a chocolate dessert this rich and intense before. It was packed with a deep chocolate flavor. Every bite was incredibly satisfying. My friend ordered the strawberries cooked in their juice with coriander sorbet. I also tried a bite of it. The natural strawberry flavor was already delicious, but the distinctive aroma of coriander elevated the dessert to another level. Thinking back on it, the chocolate dessert at this restaurant was probably the best dessert I have ever had. It was so good that I would honestly travel all the way back to France just to eat it again. Finally, we were served a pastry that looked similar to a croissant. Even this final pastry was incredibly delicious. As I mentioned earlier, I expected the meal to cost around 500 euros per person. However, when we received the bill, the total was much higher than we had expected. This was because of several additional charges. In the end, we paid around 680 euros per person. There is no doubt that this was a unique and memorable experience. It was especially memorable because it was my first time visiting such a high-end restaurant. However, I am still not sure whether the entire experience was worth merely 700 euros per person. Personally, I considered the food service atmosphere and overall experience. I think around 250 euros per person would have felt like a more reasonable price. Of course, this is only my personal opinion, based on my own taste and experience. Thank you.